Hello and welcome to Undead Gaming News, your one-stop shop for all things gaming. I'm your host Zombie, and first up this week, Sony have announced more details on their remote play handheld device, which has now been named PlayStation Portal. Formerly known, of course, as Project Q, the device looks like a DualSense controller with an 8-inch LCD screen in the middle of it. According to Sony, the screen is capable of 1080p resolution at 60 frames per second. The PlayStation Portal will cost $200, €220, or £200 respectively, when it launches later this year, but it can seemingly only stream games from a PS5 console. Sony said in a new blog post, PlayStation Portal is the perfect device for gamers in households where they might need to share their living room, TV, or simply want to play PS5 games in another room of the house. PlayStation Portal will connect remotely to your PS5 over Wi-Fi, so you'll be able to swiftly jump from playing on your PS5 to your PlayStation Portal. PlayStation Portal can play supported games that are installed on your PS5 console and use the DualSense controller. The description confirms that PlayStation Portal is solely a remote play device and will not provide access to cloud streaming of games on PlayStation Plus Premium. As such, players will need to own PS5 hardware for the PlayStation Portal to work as intended. Even if players want to use their own PS5 to stream games via PlayStation Plus Premium and then stream that to the Portal, this won't be allowed either. As the blog post goes on to say, PSVR 2 games which require the headset and games that are streamed through PlayStation Plus Premium's cloud streaming are not supported. Games that must be streamed on PS5 using a PlayStation Plus Premium account are not compatible. In other news though, a few months ago Sony announced that ebb Software's Scorn was finally making its way to the PlayStation 5. The game launched to mixed reviews as an Xbox console exclusive, but we always knew that it was going to eventually make its way to PS5 down the line. At Sony's original announcement, the team didn't announce an official release date, simply saying it was coming and showing off how Scorn will use the DualSense controller to further immerse players in its world. Now we finally learned the official release date. Scorn is coming to PlayStation 5 on October the 3rd. That's nearly a year from when it first launched on Xbox Series S and X and PC. With this new release, players will be able to pick up a physical version of Scorn that includes a steelbook case, the original soundtrack, and a digital art book. It is important to note that this is a current-gen game only, meaning that PlayStation 4 owners shouldn't expect to see the game come to their system of choice in the future. Also in the news, Nightdive Studios, the team behind the recent System Shock remake, have announced 2 new remakes that they're working on. The first is Star Wars Dark Forces, which will release in Q4 of 2023. It will feature 4K visuals up to 120 frames per second, advanced 3D rendering, gamepad support, and Steam achievements. The other remake they're working on is Turok 3, Shadow of Oblivion, which will release on November the 17th, 2023. It will feature the same improvements and additions that Star Wars Dark Forces has. A remaster for Turok Dinosaur Hunter was previously made and released back in 2015, followed by a remaster of Turok 2, Seeds of Evil, in 2017, so now they're just capping off the trilogy with this one. Also in the news, we have Dungeons 4, the latest addition to the popular Dungeon Builder series, which will launch on November the 9th. Dungeons 4 enables players to create dungeons up to 4 times larger than those of previous games, and will feature more creatures including the Horde, the Undead, and of course, demons. Snots, the workers of the dungeon, will also play a much more prominent role in this game than they have in the past. And for those times when the absolute evil needs to get involved directly, the customizable evil hand will enable governance and slapping as the situation requires. But the world below the surface is more crowded in Dungeons 4 too. The dwarves are on the scene, and they're building underground strongholds of their own, and competing with the forces of evil for space and resources. The narrator of Dungeons 3 is also returning for the new game. Dungeons 4 is up for wishlisting on Steam and the Epic Games Store, and of course planned for release on November the 9th. However, in other news, Bethesda's head of publishing Pete Hines has defended the Starfield team after a former game dev criticised the startup menu. Former game developer Mark Kern, whose past credits include StarCraft, World of Warcraft and Firefall, shared his thoughts on the physiognomy of start screens, stating, "The start screen of a game can reveal a lot about how rushed the team was and how much pride they took in their work. Starfield's start screen either shows hasty shipping deadlines by a passionate team overworked, or a team that didn't care. Start screens are often done at the very end of development. Teams are too busy making the core game. It's quite common for the start screen to completely change once the game is shipping or on patch 0. Teams that take pride want to put a good face forward and will often redo these just prior to the game going live." This of course got the attention of Pete Hines, who very simply said, they designed what they wanted, and that's been our menu for years, and was one of the first things we settled on. Having an opinion is one thing, questioning out a developer's care because you would have done it differently is highly unprofessional, coming from another dev. Hines' comments were widely supported, and they also sparked some debate about what makes a good start screen. Many great games have had very simplistic start screens, but Starfield is set to launch on September the 6th. In other news, a US video games company that worked on Call of Duty and Fortnite is going to be opening up a European headquarters in Wales. Rocket Science Corporation will employ more than 50 people creating tools for some of the world's most popular games. The Welsh government has helped to fund the move in a bid to grow the game sector in Wales. Rocket Science Corporation, which already has studios in New York and Austin, Texas, will set up a new studio in Cardiff. The company has worked with the world's biggest game developers, including the makers of Marvel games and of course Activision Blizzard. Rocket Science Corporation's co-founder Thomas Daniel, who originally is from Brigand, said, "We're coming in to work on the biggest games in the world and we're bringing the experience of our American-based teams to Cardiff. It's going to create a skill set and experience I'm not sure Wales has had to date. I was like any other kid growing up in Wales, playing on my Amiga or Super Nintendo, but I didn't know anyone who worked in games in Wales. Playing for Manchester United seemed more achievable than being successful in the games industry. I had to move to the southeast of England because at that time that's where most jobs were, and then on to America. We're looking at how can we be a foundational brick so that hopefully in a few years' time we can say, if you love games and you want to work in games, stay in Wales." Rocket Science Corporation has received £825,000 from the Welsh Government to open its new base and to provide employment for at least the next 5 years. Deputy Minister for Arts, Sports and Tourism, Dawn Bowden, said, "This significant investment will support the Welsh Government's strategic objective of developing the games industry in Wales." According to the Independent Gaming Developers Association, there were 140 games developers in Wales in 2022, compared with fewer than 100 in 2020. In 2021, Wales had a 0.7% share of the development workforce, which was far smaller than places such as London, the southeast of England and Scotland, which is home to one of the UK's biggest game development companies, Rockstar North. Cardiff has the largest number of game developers in Wales, along with smaller clusters in the northeast and Swansea. The largest publisher, Wales Interactive, has helped create games for Nintendo, PlayStation and Xbox. Chief Executive and co-founder David Banner said, "The games industry makes more money than the film and music industries combined, so it's really something Wales should tap into more going forward. There was a time gaming didn't have a tick box for support, but now we do. There is a pathway to get investment in the games industry in Wales. The reality of it is, there are lots of people who are eager to get a break in the games industry no matter what their skills are, whether it's programming, art or accountancy. Investment into the games industry will hold some of that talent and make sure it doesn't leave Wales and help the local economy." Also in the news, the original voice of Mario is stepping down. Charles Martinet has been in the role for 27 years, dating back to Super Mario 64 in 1996. He also provided the voice of Mario's twin brother Luigi and their nemesis Wario. Nintendo has now announced that Charles will take on the brand new role of Mario Ambassador. Nintendo said he'll continue to travel the world, sharing the joy of Mario and interacting with you all. "It's been an honour working with Charles to help bring Mario to life for so many years, and we want to thank and celebrate him." In 2019, Charles won the Guinness World Record for the most video game voiceover performances as the same character, which was 104 at the time. At a Canadian gaming expo 2 years ago, he told the crowd that he wanted to voice Mario until he drops dead, but said he would urge Nintendo to find someone else if he was no longer capable of doing it. It's unclear who was going to succeed Charles in the role, with Super Mario Bros. Wonder, the next game in the series, set to be released in October, and it's already been confirmed that Charles will not be reprising his role in that game. However, in other news, colourful fantasy action MMO Wayfinder, the latest from Ruined King and Darksiders studio Airship Syndicate, and Warframe publisher Digital Extremes, has hit a very harsh reception from early adopters, as the sheer volume has caused server troubles and extended wait times for those most interested in the game. This early access release costs $20, but the full game that's scheduled to launch in 6 months will be free to play. Airship Syndicate said it's seeing more players every minute of uptime than played in their beta each day, and that the queue system in place failed immediately. Players are reporting hour-long queues that end with failed connection attempts and a reset, as well as playing for only a few minutes before getting disconnected, after waiting in those queues. Other players complained about missing free items from a premium Founders Pack bundle, as well as exploitative pricing on in-game items relative to the size of in-game currency packs. Wayfinder currently has just over 13,000 reviews, with just over 5,500 of them being positive and 8,000 of them being negative, leaving it in a very mixed status. Publisher Digital Extremes acknowledged that it would be expected to have enterprise that would make a large multiplayer launch go a lot smoother than this one, considering that they're behind Warframe. They said, "We apologise, we know players have high expectations of Digital Extremes infrastructure to deliver in moments like this, and in this instance we as the publisher fell short. We did realise that buying something and not being able to actually log in and play, frankly, is a bad look. One solution we heard often was that we should have offered pre-sales to gauge interest. Unfortunately, some first-party stores do not offer pre-sales of early access, and we were unable to meet demand. It has to be a hard hit for Airshop Syndicate, whose action game credentials were founded over the past decade in the popular Darksiders series." But our next story brings us to BioWare, as they've now announced approximately 50 employees, including Dragon Age writer Mary Kirby, being let go in order to preserve the health of the studio. Gary McKay, the general manager of BioWare, broke the news in a post to the developer's official blog and described it as a deeply painful decision, stating, "We are doing everything we can to ensure the process is handled with empathy, respect, and clear communication." Gary stated that the development of Dragon Age Dreadwolf and the next Mass Effect game will not be adversely affected by the losses. Additionally, there are internal opportunities for those who have been eliminated in this restructuring, but he said that it's unlikely that all 50 ex-employees will be able to slot into a new role at the company. However, Dragon Age fans are very shocked that senior writer Mary Kirby has been let go alongside the claim that it would not affect the long-awaited new game at all. In 2006, she joined BioWare, and over the course of almost 2 decades, worked on titles like Dragon Age Origins, Star Wars The Old Republic, Dragon Age 2, its expansions, Legacy and Mark of the Assassin, and most recently, Dragon Age Inquisition and its expansions, Jaws of Hakon and Trespasser. She is also the writer of fan-favourite dwarf rogue Varric, who has been used as the narrator for Dragon Age Dreadwolf's promotional trailers. She did state that it will be her last Dragon Age game, so presumably her role in its development will be complete before she's made to leave, which would explain why Gary McKay stated it wouldn't affect the game. As for our final story, in a bid to appease the UK's CMA, in the hopes of getting their approval for the acquisition of Activision Blizzard, Microsoft have now announced that it will relinquish streaming rights to Ubisoft. Ubisoft will have the rights to deliver Activision Blizzard games such as Call of Duty through cloud streaming services, which include its own Ubisoft Plus subscription service. The company will also have the rights to license access to other cloud gaming providers and platform holders. The deal will specifically give Ubisoft exclusive worldwide rights in this area, according to a press release, with the exception of non-exclusive rights to stream in the European Economic Area. This deal will apply to all existing and current Activision Blizzard games, as well as those to be released over the next 15 years, once Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard is completed. Microsoft has submitted a brand new acquisition deal to the CMA, which will undergo a completely new round of probing and scrutiny. The deal has already passed regulator scrutiny in a number of regions, including the United States, but the UK's CMA remains one of the final hurdles for Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, who recently pushed back the merger deadline until October of 2023. But that's all we have time for this week. I know Gamescom has been going on over the past few days, but there's been a lot within Gamescom to cover, so it's getting its own separate video, because I didn't want to bog down this week's news with everything that's going on within Gamescom. So be on the lookout for that. If you have any thoughts on anything discussed this week, please leave it in the comment section below as always, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.